Here we go, episode 3 of The Nevers, entitled Ignition, written by Kevin Lau and directed by David Semel. If you've been following the previous episodes' analyses I've been doing, and if you haven't, you should go watch them now, you'll know I normally sit back and focus on the show through a writing, directing lens, and in relation to those people's previous works, specifically when it came to their work in the Whedonverse. David Semel has directed 4 episodes of Buffy, Season 1's Never Kill a Boy on the First Date.
You can't be here.
Oh, and I suppose you guys are allowed? What are we doing here? Are we gonna see a dead body?
Possibly several. Guys, watch him.
Season 2's What's My Line Part 2.
What the hell is this?
It's your lucky day, Spike. 2 slayers. No waiting.
And Go Fish. And Season 3's Lover's Walk.
Oh, God.
2 of those 4 episodes involve themes where things are revealed to the characters and us, specifically Kendra being a slayer in What's My Line, and Xander and Willow's affair in Lover's Walk. He's an excellent director when it comes to directing what the scene needs to be and not overdoing it for sensationalism. And he is responsible for one of my favorite tracking shots and gags in Buffy.
He created all things in order that they might exist. And the generative forces of this world are wholesome, and there is no destructive poison in them, for the dominion of Hades is not on earth, for righteousness is immortal.
So Cordelia's gonna be okay?
Kevin Lau, on the other hand, is a new writer to the Whedonverse and to TV in general, with his most notable credit being Lovecraft Country. How does he do, in my opinion? Pretty damn good. Let's jump into this week's episode, shall we? Firstly, this video will contain spoilers for episode 3 of The Nevers, obviously, and I only say that because I think this one should be watched before it's ruined for anyone. It's that good. I will also be spoiling some moments of Lost up to Season 2 and Dexter up to Season 4, as well as some video games like Kingdom Hearts and pretty much every Final Fantasy game for the most part. The episode opens with Bonfire Annie threatening the Beggar King's men and telling them that the Limehouse now belongs to her after blowing up their smuggled goods. Penance and True reveal themselves from the shadows, True already knowing this would all happen in a rippling, and we have a brilliant back and forth dialogue between all 3 and see Penance's invention from last episode working.
Fuck off!
As well as some bickering between the 2.
The scenario's a sight more violent than advertised. You said we were going to speak.
We are, this is our language.
And now you're no better than her.
And hello, Kevin Lau, starting off strong. This episode is so fast with its dialogue, I didn't absorb it all the first time, but watching a second time, it's so snappy and fun and cute, and I love it. True asks Bonfire Annie to join them at the orphanage, since True is convinced Annie saved her at the end of last episode because it is her natural instinct, and Annie is, as expected, hesitant, but also charmed, but also respects True. It's all very subtle and well done. The conversation is just great. It's then revealed that the burning goods are opium, as a really good and humorous way to compare it to the artificial happiness, as Annie describes, that Mary's song makes the touch feel when she sings, and Penance starts feeling a little tingly.
Tingling, like my hand fingers.
She found a better world.
And it's just so cute. Annie gets away when True is helping Penance, and as they leave the scene, True runs back to breathe in some opium for the road, and I fucking love her! The bond between these 2 women has already wrapped its tingly little hand fingers around my cold dead black heart, and nothing can hurt these 2 ever, or else I'll write an angry letter. Hello, Joss, please rip my heart out, thanks. We have a short scene of True admiring her face that's not her face in the vanity once again, until True goes to Horatio to have her lungs checked from the night before and mentions that she can barely remember Malady.
Makes it worse somehow.
Horatio and True get into a spat. Horatio thinks Penance is being a bit reckless, and he doesn't enjoy seeing her have to come to him to get fixed up all the time, and he's especially angry that Penance was with True last night, and that she's not taking the danger she puts herself and others in seriously enough. He mentions that his wife thinks he walked away from what I am assuming is working with and helping the touched, but that's a bit unclear. A lot of the conversations and dialogue this episode has a buttload of subtext, and this one is chock full of it the entire time, and I appreciate the director adding movement in this scene, having the characters descend a staircase as they talked and other touched overhear them.
I'm sorry I can't be more generous about being your mistake.
Mary and the other touched are all singing around the piano and stop when True comes in. She tells them to continue, and Mary feels a bit weird because she can't find her voice for the song she can sing and should be working to figure out how to sing it again instead of jamming with the girls. True is nice about it and tells them to continue, and Laura Donnelly has so much charisma falling out of her ass. I could only be so blessed to receive a fraction of it. She's dangerous yet motherly, cold and distant but also friendly. Incredible work from her. Penance comes in, says the opium gave her a vision, and she shows the group her idea to amplify Mary's voice all over the city in the park. We have even more cute dialogue with Penance wanting to call it the Brightener, and True says it's an amplifier, and ending with Penance sleeping on the table. Another great scene overall. We see the bond of the touched, Mary's dilemma, Penance's plan to push the plot forward, and just more Penance adorableness than anyone fucking deserves. Mary goes to see True to tell her she's still working to find the song within her, and True tells her to relax about it. Mary mentions she heard that True was trying to recruit Annie the night before, and that True is keeping secrets. Even more meaty, quick dialogue is thrown in our faces as Mary presses True for answers. True dodges a bit, but finally explains
3 years ago, I woke up knowing things that I shouldn't.
and that she was declared mentally insane, so yes, she keeps secrets. She goes on to list all the ways she's been changed since being touched: nervous in crowds, hallucinations, and...
When I meet someone, the first thing I think of is how to kill them.
But she...
I genuinely like horses.
Mary asks what True knows that she shouldn't. True doesn't respond, and Mary says maybe the reason she can't find her song is because she doesn't know if True is being honest about why she wants all the touched in one place. Ugh, good shit. Swan is auditioning, aka having sex with the men and women for his sex club Pheromones, and the joke about the woman he's having sex with knowing the exact time when he thought her turn was to turn bright purple as she came was funny. Augustus comes in and says he's uncomfortable with the audition process and this whole business in general, doesn't want his mom to find out, yada yada mama's boy. Okay, so, I don't generally know how I feel about this storyline. I'm intrigued, but I won't really understand its full purpose, I don't think, until the entire story is finished, so I truly can't make a decision on how I feel about Swan and this club. But I will say that Swan so far has gone back and forth from character I love to character I don't love to complex character to not so complex character. It works, so he's sort of chaotic and does what he wants, but it's still early in this storyline for me to truly be able to make a decision. I think by the end, this storyline is going to have to do with something similar to people that want to make money off current trends, like some of the corporations at the Gay Pride Parade. We spend a short moment with Lord Mason. He's installing a telephone in his house, and he's grumpy about it. One of his servants asks if he's been seeing a woman, a widow. Mason tells her to fire whoever started the rumor and that she will drop all
Your romantic yen for a mistress.
and that the house has all the company he can abide. This scene is shot from really low to the ground most of the time, and it gives this off-putting feeling of being small next to these characters. It works and is subtle. He leaves in his chariot and drives past the graves of both his daughter and his wife. We knew about his daughter's death from the moment she was touched, but now I'm curious about his wife. Based on the dates, it looks like she dies in childbirth, which actually adds more depth to his character for me and why he's so gosh darn damn grumpy all the time. The Beggar King scolds the men from earlier and cuts one of the guys for losing the goods to Bonfire Annie. Frank goes to his office to find a note on his desk.
Anyone see you left this?
It says to meet him at a pub immediately with Swan's crest on top. In Mason's house, one of the telephone installers wanders in the basement. It's spoopy, and he hears something behind a metal door. The servant from earlier tells him not to go near the dogs, but like that definitely ain't no fucking dogs. Penance and Myrtle are leaving the market getting supplies for her amplifier when they spot the flyer from last episode that leads to Dennis O'Hare's torture dungeon. Frank arrives at the pub. In case you couldn't tell, the scenes are much shorter in this episode, but more on that later. A lot of mini movements are happening here for a purpose. Horatio is leaving his home when he's greeted by a man telling him he's finally received his private carriage. When he goes inside, it's revealed to be Melody seeking him out for help with the gunshot wound from the previous episode. They share some dialogue back and forth until he agrees to help her, and I just have to comment again that the woman that is playing Melody is giving me life. The expression in her eyes is perfect. Sometimes she looks like a little girl, and sometimes she is like absolutely terrifying. Back to Frank at the bar, the bartender comes over and hands him another letter, saying she was told to wait 2 hours to give it to him. It says, "This is what it feels like to waste my time." Frank looks up and sees a young twinky boy sort of eyeing him from the hallway, and he follows him. This segment is up there with one of my favorites of the show so far. So naturally, you think this is a hookup, and you're like, wait, Frank was engaged to Mary, what? Is he gay? And then you're like, nah, because when they both go into the room together, Swan is waiting for Frank, and you're like, oh, it's one of Swan's boys. Okay. We learn that Swan hired Frank to find Mary, and the dialogue here is so much subtext and is delivered so well by both actors and the writer that it all leads up to the revelation that Mary left Frank, according to Swan, because she either found out she couldn't give him what he wanted, or...
What did you find out I was?
I was drunk!
And my jaw dropped. Frank has slept with Swan and is actually a gay man in the closet, and Frank gets extremely angry, saying he was only drunk, blind drunk. And Swan says, "The first time, Frank. The first time you were drunk." Which is just like, oh my god, it's so fucking juicy. I love it. Fuck. Okay, then we have this moment with this man in the cell, and he's leaking stuff from his arms, and oh my god, I just realized now this is setting up what happens later in the episode, and it's actually the man with the machine gun arm from the theater shooting, and the green shit he bleeds is literally like metal, and he bleeds metal, and I just realized how fucking cool that is. A police officer apparently seems to call him out of the cell, for he is needed for some reason. True and Lucy all go to the Knot orphanage and see what's up after Penance shows them all the flyer. The woman we saw greeting the Lost Touch answers the door. True wastes no time bringing her in. While fighting, True takes out one of the masked henchmen, and it turns out they're cyborgs with no lower jaw, and I find them exceptionally attractive. They grab some files from the house and bring it back with them to the orphanage. Frank goes to see Mary, and she tells him she's a bit nervous to stay with the Touched, and he offers her help finding a new place to stay, or to stay in the spare bedroom in his house. But it's uncomfortable for a moment, and he says, oh, I wouldn't try anything, and she says, I know you wouldn't, because you're a gentleman. And this scene is done so well. I love what they're doing with Mary. We learn she knows about him being gay. Maybe they've never spoken about it before, but I'm guessing not really like this if they have, and she tells him she loves him anyway, and there's a part of himself that he hates, and she doesn't like to see that. It's so sweet and real and so juicy between these two characters. Ugh. Mary also talks about how she's having trouble finding the song inside of herself, and Frank says he wants to be there when she does sing. To maybe find out if he's touched as well, since, he's gay and all and hates it. And this is just... I love this. It adds an importance to Mary needing to sing at the park more than we already have. We now have something personal and about a solo character to latch onto with the song, as well as a grand picture of what it could mean for the progression of the development of the orphanage. It broke my heart and made me sad when he asked to hear the song and said if it doesn't work, then he'd just be listening and it'd be fine. But kudos to the actor for killing the scene, as you can tell Frank truly does want to be touched. He wants maybe some explanation for why he's like this, and I can relate to this as a gay man myself, having gone through the process of learning to accept myself at a younger age. True shows Lavinia the files and the list of girls' names that were at the not orphanage, and Lavinia says the flyers need to be taken down. Wink. Lavinia says she'll get the information for True about who owns the house, but doubts it'll tell them much. Lavinia asks if Mary is ready to sing her song, and the delivery of this line just leaks with dense subtext of "that can't happen." God, I love Olivia. Claps, 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 claps. The woman from the not orphanage is questioned by the touched and the woman that is a walking truth serum. She tells them she was recruited because she killed her daughter after finding out she was touched with the ability to turn any liquid into water, and drowned her in a bathtub. And once again, the acting on this show is getting better and better. Whenever someone is under the spell of Miss Truth Serum, it begs to be acted in such a heightened and truthful way that if I was an actor on this show, I'd be so excited for the possibilities this would allow almost every character to have. Lucy freaks out and goes to touch her. Remember, anything she touches breaks. They hold her back and she leaves upset with what she almost did. Penance explains to Mary that Lucy found out she was touched when she picked up her 6-month-old baby son, and his bones immediately broke in her hands. This sparks Mary into a reason to not only test the amplifier, but absolutely make it work. Not just for the lost touched being killed and experimented on, but also Frank's needs and now Lucy's well-being and mental health. 3 factors that absolutely justifies Mary's reasoning for doing something like this so soon in the series. This is good writing. This is good planning. Applause, applause, applause. I live for the applause. True is riding home in her carriage and looking over all the girls' names lost to the doctor and his experiments. Her fingers start to twitch, and now I'm thinking that something physically happens to her when one of the touched is lost. Suddenly, she is flung from the carriage, off a bridge, into the water below in an incredible shot, and is greeted, not by Miss Rose at the door, but our friend, Mr. Walks on Water with chain weapons and works for the Beggar King, who is now out to destroy True. This is 150% the best Whedonverse fight sequence I have ever seen. It outshines that one in the 6th episode of Dollhouse. I was worried it was going to be a little stodgy with the effects, but it absolutely looks like someone who is completely buoyant on water fighting someone who isn't. It's just smart. True can go under the surface, but he can't. She breaks his arm by wrapping her entire body around it. He tries to chain her under the water. He throws her at one point, and eventually she gets the chain around his neck and chokes him out against the water, and the special effects of him being pulled down on the surface is done so well and looks so cool. The Touched and Frank gather at the park, and Mary starts singing. It's hypnotic and wonderful, and we see all the Touched in the city hearing the song at once, some reacting, some continuing with their day. Lucy is tearing, I'm crying, Frank can't hear it, and whenever the camera cuts to him, it just shows silence, and it's so emotional, and he didn't get what he wanted, and men being gay doesn't necessarily mean they're touched, and I'm just so fixated on this moment. It's beautiful and so heavy with everyone's reactions to it until the man with the machine gun hand just shoots Mary with no mercy, and I am floored. My jaw hit the ground and I legitimately gasped. This scene is not only shocking, but carries weight and the potential of the story with it. So there are two ways to do moments like this. Using Dexter Season 4 as an example, when Rita dies, it is shocking, but ultimately carries no weight. You don't expect it to happen, yes, but you don't necessarily receive anything from it either in regards to ripples within the story, sans the loss of a character. Dexter teases what would happen if Rita found out about Dexter being a serial killer for 4 goddamn seasons, and if she's going to die, it would have been interesting to use the potential of her finding out about Dexter and his secret before she dies, since regardless of her reaction, she would die anyway and it wouldn't matter. Instead, it's just shocking. And then sort of forgotten about after 3 episodes instead of rippling and carrying weight throughout the rest of the show. The other side is Lost, which also has a similar moment at the end of Season 2 when Ana Lucia and Libby are both shot randomly by Michael. It's shocking for a moment, yes, but comes from the buildup of something, and resonates throughout the rest of the show. Libby is about to finally have a date with Hugo after the entire season teases the two of them together, and Anna gets shot in response to a just as shocking death earlier in Season 2. Libby's death is random and insane and shocking, but carries more with it than just shock. The same thing happens here in the Nevers. This is a random kill, yes, but it was all being set up. Frank needing the song, Lucy needing the song for her healing, which is used to tell us, the audience, just how wonderful this song must feel and sound purely based on Lucy's reaction and need for it, as well as the weight the song carries. Now, every touched that heard it knows the song and will have a reaction to the news of Mary's death. This is why we see Bonfire Annie has joined the team when they all gather at Mary's funeral in the final shot. It's powerful, too. It reminds me, wait for it, of fucking video games. Specifically, a trope that Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts do a lot. Since you arguably get more attached to a character you are physically playing, these games usually start off by having a short tutorial section that lasts a few hours of game time in a small, homey type world where either your character grew up or spent most of their life. Only after having you do something that required a lot of time and care, for example, building that damn raft in Kingdom Hearts, your entire world is destroyed and you have no control over it, and this sparks the rest of your adventure, instead of just starting it off with the beginning of the adventure. This makes you understand the character's drive to move forward, and sometimes get their home back, or avenge its destruction. This is how this moment in the Nevers feels for me, and if this is something they were willing to do in the beginning, then you know I am going to be here for the rest of this. The new showrunner better not shy away from killing characters not for shock, but for ripple effect. I would mark this episode even more of an inciting incident than Mary's song and capture in episode 1. Overall, I liked this episode so much better than episode 2. Although I have loved all 3 so far, I cannot wait for next week. Check out my thoughts on other films and TV shows by subscribing to my channel, and maybe, give me a like or something. It helps the YouTube algorithm. See you all next week for episode 4.